Hello, everyone. Welcome. Greetings from Waterloo, Ontario. We're thrilled to have you join us for our informational webinar about the Master of Future Cities program, or the MFC program, in the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo. We appreciate you being here today. My name is Christina Pope. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll be your host for today's session. I'm the Graduate Studies Marketing and Recruitment Specialist, and I'm joined today by MFC faculty, staff, and students. Dr. Leah Minaker is an associate professor in the Faculty of Environment and the director of the Future Cities Institute. Dr. Minaker's research focuses on areas including healthy cities, health equality, food systems, and youth mental health. Cynthia Subramaniam, the administrator for the Future Cities program, is also here, and she's your point of contact for admissions and administrative inquiries. Dr. Marta Berbez, the Kaivan Communities Assistant Professor and one of your instructors for the Cities Systems and Synergy Collaboration on Campus Residency course, as well as Dr. Helen Kerr, our practitioner in residence, the other co-instructor for the residency, and also here to talk about the Singapore field course. And last and certainly not least, we have Kelsey Kublik, who is a current Master of Future Cities student. A couple of important housekeeping items before we proceed. This webinar is being recorded, and I'll be able to distribute a recording of the webinar about 24 hours after it concludes. And we will be following up the presentation with a Q&A segment where you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of all of our presenters. And we ask that if you have a question to please put it in the Q&A box. And we will try to address questions that we feel have the greatest benefit for our audience. And if the question is personal in nature or requires a one-on-one response, we will be in contact with you personally. To begin, the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land granted to the Six Nations that include 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated through our Office of Indigenous Relations. On September 30th, the day of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, the university opened outdoor classroom space, which is a representation of the continuous presence of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit on this territory. You can see the photo here. And it's used as an outdoor classroom, but it's also open to all community members to enjoy the beautiful space, which I did when the weather was a little bit warmer. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Minaker to take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to see so many people in the audience. I'm going to start with some context about why we began the Masters of Future Cities. Much of this will probably sound familiar to you, given that you are considering doing a Masters in Future Cities, which is why you're here. So in terms of some global context setting for the Masters program, the 21st century has been called the century of the city. And about 70% of the global population will live in cities by 2050. This is the first, so in about 2008, that was the first time that more than half of the world's population was living in cities. And so this urbanization is happening very, very quickly. At the same time, shifts in climate, in the economy, in political instability means that our futures have never been more uncertain. Cities also are sites of concentrated problems. So cities contribute 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Inequities, poverty, economic and health inequities are concentrated as well in cities, often within close geographic proximity. And cities can modify how people experience global impacts from climate, conflict, or other transitions. At the same time, so those are kind of big problems that you are all, I'm sure, very familiar with. At the same time, cities are invention and collaboration spaces, and there's huge potential for solutions within cities. We think at the Future Cities Institute and beyond, and in this program, that interdisciplinary solutions are absolutely needed and possible. Can I advance? Oh, thank you, Christina. So the purpose of the Future Cities Institute, which is one of the institutes in the Faculty of Environment and related to the Masters of Future Cities program, is fostering healthy, prosperous future cities and communities. Thanks. And the Master of Future Cities was designed to provide early and mid-career professionals with competency in futures and systems thinking, as well as foresight methods that can be used to better address the significant challenges of today that I just mentioned, while anticipating and generating innovative and sustainable options for uncertain and increasingly complex futures in the context of cities. So there are several learning objectives throughout the program. The first is to gain interdisciplinary knowledge of concepts, information, and techniques relevant to future studies, sustainability, and cities. The second is to build a critical understanding of the current research and to build competence in applying research techniques specific to future studies, sustainability, and cities. The third is to build competence in applying existing knowledge through research and critical analysis to address future cities' challenges. There are three more I'm just going to quickly outline. So the fourth one is to demonstrate professional capacity and autonomy through ethical behavior consistent with academic integrity and research guidelines, personal initiative, responsibility, and sound decision-making in diverse academic and professional situations. The fifth is to demonstrate effective communication in visual, oral, and written form. And the final one is to recognize complexity, uncertainty, and limitations of knowledge related to future studies, sustainability, and cities. So the program structure and curriculum, there are 5 required courses, 1 recommended that Helen will talk to you more about. 1 methods course, you have a choice from 2 methods courses, you can take 1, as well as 2 electives, and the electives are fairly broad. So the 5 required courses, the first one is an in-person block course taught by Helen and Marta, and in August, and this is called Cities, Systems, Synergy, and Collaboration. So you'll hear more about that particular course. It was a huge hit this past August when we launched. The second is called Tools for Futures Thinking, taught by Helen. The third is called Futures Thinking in Cities. The fourth is called Sustainable Future Cities. And the fifth is a Future Cities capstone, and that one is also taught by Marta. The recommended field course is a 10-day-ish field course to Singapore, which is, as far as I understand, the only city/country in the world where they implement strategic foresight in every single government department, which is why this is a destination for us. And in terms of methods, the first one is called Data, Methods, and Models for Future Cities. This is one that I will be teaching. Or you can choose between that and a different course that is called Methods for Sustainable Development Practice, and it's a systems approach. The elective courses, like I mentioned, there are many, and this is just some of them. We're in the process right now of looking at additional potential elective courses from across all faculties at the University of Waterloo that might be a better fit for your interests, and might be relevant for your own particular kind of forming the degree the way you want it. So the first one is called Critical Engagements with Urban Technology. That one is taught out of architecture. The second is called The Socially Just City. There's The Future of Work, Sustainability Transitions in Cities, Mobility Futures, Modeling the City. That's a course aimed at explaining agent-based modeling, and Physical Infrastructure and Planning, and that is within the School of Planning at the University of Waterloo. So like I said, there are multiple other courses we're currently looking into. So this is just a kind of short list of the types of electives that you can take in this program. And I'm going to turn it over to Marta.
Hi, thanks for that introduction. So my name is Marta Verbes. I use she, her pronouns, and in my research, I work with different actors in cities to co-produce sustainable, resilient, and urban futures. and just urban futures. Um, so I am involved with 3 courses of the Masters of Future Cities, and today I will be talking about FCIT 600, which is Cities, Systems, Synergy, and Collaboration. And this I co-teach with Helen Kerr. So this is the first course that you will take as you coming into the masters, and there's a couple of things about it that are quite exciting in the way that it's designed. So one is that this is an in-person course with a full incoming cohort, and typically we run it the last week of August. So it is a fairly intense experience, but we do this for a couple of reasons. One is that we want to set the intellectual basis and the methodological foundations for the rest of the program. So it is intended to set the tone. And the other one is that the course serves to create relationships among the cohort, among the students. And that's not just because it's nice to know each other, but because we truly believe that the type of futures thinking that we want to do in that type of futuring, relationships and trust are important. And I saw a couple of things, maybe you can advance to the next slide, about the type of featuring that we do in this program. We want students to understand cities as complex and dynamic systems. And I think that we can all appreciate that cities are made up of interacting social, ecological, technological elements. And that's what we require inter and transdisciplinary conversations. And that's what we welcome very diverse cohorts. But I think that complexity at the core, it also means that there's uncertainty. And so that means that we simply cannot control or predict the future. And seen from that perspective, then anticipatory tools are really needed, and it's obvious why. And maybe in the next slide, one of the most elegant ways in terms of dealing with complexity is through design thinking. And so design thinking is an iterative approach to problem solving. So it combines convergent thinking and divergent thinking. And students are typically given a problem at the very beginning of the course, and they go through the 4 phases of design thinking. So we'll design some activities initially to push them to really understand the problem from different perspectives, to grapple with that complexity in the problem until they come up with a concrete problem statement that often looks nothing like what they started at the beginning, and that's by design. And then they'll move into the solution space, where they will be testing, they will be prototyping solutions until they come up with something that is a workable solution. And maybe next slide. We finally also want to instill in the students a sense that featuring should and featuring and design should center human needs. So the idea is that we're trying to direct our collective energy to making cities more livable and more just for everyone. And I like to show the examples of the super blocks of Barcelona, because they're fairly, that's the picture that you see there, they're very low tech, but I think that they were very disruptive and very innovative in terms of coming up with solutions for traffic congestion, for walkability, livability, health outcomes, pollution, etc. So we can talk more about that later. But the idea, I think that the reflection that we want to convey to our students is that doing future is not simply doing things better, but it's about doing better things. And I'll leave it at that. And I'm very excited to introduce Kelsey, which is who's one of our stellar students. So I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, Marta. Yeah, as it says here, I'm a planning engineer with the City of Calgary, but of course I'm here today as a student in the Master of Future Cities program. Since I'm working full-time and I've got 2 little kids at home, I'm enrolled in the program part-time with the 3-year option. So I'm taking 1 course at a time until the end of the program. However, I know the cohort that I started with is a pretty good mix of full-time students and part-time students. Before I talk a bit about the courses that I'm in right now, I'll start with a bit more of my background and why I chose the Master of Future Cities program. My education and background is in chemical and process engineering with a focus on water treatment. My experience has been fairly technical and very operational, and I felt like I was missing some aspects that I wanted to dive deeper into around environmental sustainability and sustainability strategy and planning. So I was looking for a master's program that had this sustainability lens, but one that was also flexible enough to work with my schedule. When I found the Master of Future Cities program, it felt like such a great fit with more than just my goal to learn about sustainability. Unlike some of the other programs that I had looked at, it also closely fit with the current work that I'm doing and so many of my personal interests. I think living and working in a city, it's hard not to care about the future of it. So I applied for the program and I'm now enrolled part-time. So I'm currently about 1.5 courses into the program. And so far I've been completely validated in my rationale for choosing the MFC program. I think at first I was a bit nervous about being a new program and not knowing what to expect from it. But now that I'm in it, it more than fits the goals that I'm trying to achieve. So I made some notes to share about my first impressions of the first 2 courses that I'll talk about today. So the first course, like Marta said, was the 1-week residency in Waterloo that was held in August and taught by Marta and Helen. I think there's about 13 of us in the program, and the residency, a big part of it was about getting to meet the cohort of other students, and then also getting that crash course in systems thinking and design thinking that Marta talked about, and how it all relates back to cities. It was also a bit of a crash course in group projects, at least for me, since it had been over a decade since I've done a proper group project, especially in an academic environment, and even more so in an interdisciplinary environment. It was a chance to also better understand how a master's level program is different from a bachelor's degree. It seemed like everyone was really in it because they wanted to be there. And the focus is way more on actually getting something out of the program than getting a certain grade. I think I felt prepared for kind of the intense block week style of coursework that we did during the residency. But one thing that caught me a bit by surprise was the close connections and relationships that we were able to make with the cohort. Kind of on the logistics end, I flew into Waterloo from Calgary for the week of the program, and it was completely worth the trip. I stayed in kind of an Airbnb setup, but I know some classmates took advantage of graduate residence housing that was available for the residency, and some other classmates were even commuting from the Toronto area for the class days. The second course that I'm in now currently is with Helen, which is Tools for Futures Thinking. I have been loving this course, and I've found it already so applicable for my current job, even just shifting my mindset about how to think about the future. This course is also a lot of group work. So having had the in-person experience with the residency, I felt a lot more prepared to collaborate with my team, especially now that everything is online. This course is one of the courses that is synchronous, which means that we meet together for class once a week. And this has worked really well for me, even with the time zone change. I think partially because I knew what to expect from the schedule from the start of the course. I know some of the other courses are asynchronous, meaning I'll be able to do coursework on my own time, which will be, I think, even more flexible. So I'll leave it there about the courses, as I know there's some more details to come in the slides, but I'll finish by saying that even though I'm pretty early in the program, I would highly recommend the Master of Future Cities to anyone who's thinking about applying. Thank you. I'm going to pass it on to Helen next.
Hi there. Thank you. It's been great having Kelsey in the program too. She's a really enthusiastic and terrific student to have. It's so great for faculty members to interact with really excited students as well. That's part of what makes it good to be teaching here. So one of the elective courses that you can choose to take is a field study course that we are conducting in Singapore this year. And so just to tell you a little bit about it, so we're going off in May for 10 days, partly to account for travel. We'll be in Singapore itself for 7 full days, I believe, and we have one stopover along the way. So it's a very exciting opportunity to get a lot of information in a really compressed amount of time, kind of like the residency course at the beginning. The reason that we chose Singapore as a place to visit is that it's a fascinating city that's gone through a huge transition in a short amount of time, from being a very rough developing country into one of the most prosperous countries in the world. It's a tiny island nation sitting in the middle, like almost on the equator, sort of faced with intense climate impacts. They've had to manage their ability to live with really limited resources going forward. And so from all sorts of perspectives, it's an interesting location for us to visit. And so what I've done is I've established contact with professionals working in Singapore that can give us sort of an inside view of how they're incorporating futures thinking into what they're looking at. And so in the course, we'll arrive, we are intending to fly through Amsterdam and have a mini visit to Amsterdam, another city that's trying to really put themselves on the map as a green city, and then continue on to Singapore, which has stated that their objective is to be the greenest city in the world, and then begin the process of touring different facilities, meeting with government officials and business people to try and get a sense of what it's like to work and live in a place that is in sort of seemingly constant flux and preparing itself for the future. So Leah mentioned that they have they've been using futures thinking at every level of government and is fully incorporated into their policymaking and decision making, and offers us a really interesting contrast or complement to other places in the world. What can we learn from this experience? So that I'm hoping that many of you, if you decide to come to the program, are going to opt to come. But as I said, it's an optional course. If you're not able to come along with us, you can also take another elective. So that's Singapore. If you can switch the. Yeah, so I have an unusual title at the university. I'm called a practitioner in residence. And the reason for that is that I practice half the time and I teach half the time. And so my work, I'm trained as an industrial designer, but my work has shifted to foresight, which is what I do almost exclusively with cities all around the world. And so that practice is a really interesting link for me into the Future Cities program and the Institute. And so if you choose to learn about futures thinking and all the activities that you would be involved with doing that, you might find that you are prepared to work for government, where you might be giving people new perspective on policy development and how you might make resilient decisions for the future. If you intend to work in the private sector, you might be using futures thinking as a way to really prepare for future market opportunities that are upcoming, not in a predictive way, but in an anticipatory way. I work as a consultant, so my firm works with different organizations all over the place, as I said, and so that's an option for you too. And then there's also research that is being conducted, again, all over the world, both in academic institutions and in outside of academia, where people are doing either site-specific research about what is coming at us, or from a larger systemic perspective, how to help people anticipate and prepare for the future. So if that's your interest, or maybe you want to take all the futures thinking that you learned and incorporate it into the job that you already have. And so that's possible too. So hopefully that gives you at least a taste of what's possible. So now I'm going to pass it back to Leah, who's going to give you more information.
Thanks, Helen. So the next 3 slides are just to show you the different kinds of options in terms of time frame for this degree, just to really underscore some of that flexibility that Kelsey was mentioning. So you can do this program in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. If you choose to do it in 1 year as a full-time student, this is what the schedule looks like. So Marta talked about FCIT 600, which is that Cities, Systems, Synergy, and Collaboration, which is the on-campus residency course. That happens in August. Everybody who's starting the program that year, no matter if it's part-time or full-time, will take that first block course in August. If you're full-time, then you would take 3 courses in the fall. So that would be the one that Helen's currently teaching, another one that's online and asynchronous, and your first elective. In the winter of that first year, you would take a methods course, which is that one of 2 methods courses we offer, the Sustainable Future Cities course, and then your second elective. And in the spring, you would take either the field course or your third elective, as well as the Future Cities capstone. And that's how you would finish this degree in 1 year. The next slide shows the 2-year option. And so this is what this looks like. Again, same pre-fall start with the course that Marta and Helen teach. Then in fall, you could take 2 courses. Winter, you would take 2 courses as well. Spring, you would take 2 courses. And then in the second year, you could take an elective as well as the capstone. And then finally in the third year, the 3-year option, you're basically just taking 1 course every term. So kind of that pre-fall course, the in-person, and then this is what I think maybe what Kelsey's doing with the 1 course per term. So most of the courses are online and asynchronous, which just means you can do it whenever you like. There's no specific class times. That's a little different for Helen's course, the Tools for Futures Thinking, where there is a weekly class meeting. There may be some group work in many of the courses where you'll have to figure out with your small group, when you can meet. But other than that, it's very, very flexible with the time, because like I said before, this is a program that was aimed towards people who are early and mid-career folks who are looking to upgrade or to learn something out of their own interests about future cities. So these are a couple of additional facts and program features. So like I said, it's mostly online. It's a course-based master's, which means there is not a thesis component or a specific, there's no thesis component. I was going to say there's no research component, but there is going to be quite a bit of research just all within courses. We really, at the University of Waterloo in the Faculty of Environment, we really do have a world-class faculty. So these are some of the folks who will be teaching you. Sarah Birch does sustainability transitions research, climate change governance, mitigation and adaptation in cities. Dr. Simran Singh looks at small island economies, the socio-metabolic risk, susceptibility and challenges of climate change within cities. He works all over the world. And he teaches one of the methods courses. You've already met me, but I'll be teaching our methods course as well in the FCIT methods course. Cameron McCordick does a lot of work around urban sustainable development, vulnerability, and sustainable progress in cities. And he works predominantly in African cities, which I think also will provide a very interesting perspective. Helen Kerr, you already know her as well. And Dr. Nancy Worth is in the Geography and Environmental Management department here. And she teaches the Future of Work course. So she looks at inequalities, age and generations, and feminist theory, specifically as it relates to work in cities. And so the other thing I wanted to mention, and this goes to the interdisciplinarity. So these faculty members listed here are from every department within the Faculty of Environment. So for example, I'm from the School of Planning. We have a couple of colleagues from Geography, from SEED, which is the School of Enterprise and Economic Development, SURS, which is the Sustainable Something Resources. Sorry. And so all of the departments within our faculty are involved in teaching this course, which is very exciting. And then we've already talked about the international field trip, which we're all very, very excited about as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Cynthia.
Thank you, Leah. So I'll be going over the admissions requirements for the MFC program. So to be admissible, we do require at least a 4-year bachelor's degree or equivalent. We are looking for students to join us from various backgrounds, such as humanities, social sciences, health, business, or engineering. Essentially, we are looking for a wide range of individuals who would want to benefit from this program. So even if your discipline is not listed here, we would encourage you to apply. Next, an academic average of 75% in the last 20 courses is required. So this would translate to the last 2 years of studies in a standard 4-year bachelor's program. So for international students, we do have a web page that translates the academic requirements based on your country. So we will include the link for you in the chat. So this is a helpful guideline to start with. However, meeting the minimum requirement does not guarantee admission into the program. Next, we do require 2 letters of references. Look for people who can speak to your experience and your qualifications. So this can either be academic or professional. So for academic references, it can be a faculty member who you worked with on an individual basis or in a smaller class setting. If you're already in the workforce, you can provide professional references as well. So this could be someone who is your direct supervisor or higher. Again, someone who can speak to your experience and qualifications. Next, we do require your resume and CV, which you would upload directly to your application. Next is the supplementary information form, also known as SIF. This contains questions specific to your program. So we want to know why you are interested in the program, your experience in the field, and what you're looking to gain out of this program. So this is an opportunity for you to sell yourself to the admissions committee. So it gives us a full picture of you as a candidate and your aside from your transcript and your resume. So we'll be transitioning to a new application portfolio shortly. So depending on when you apply, so it would either be uploaded through your Quest account or it would be included as a section on your application portal itself. So lastly, all graduate students must meet the English language proficiency, also known as ELP. So if you are an international student, you might be required to submit ELP proof. So we have several accepted ELP tests such as TOEFL, IELTS, and UW's own EFAS program. Scores are only valid for 2 years from the test date, so we recommend completing the ELP test at least 2 months prior to the deadline. So for the MFC program, the application deadline is February the 1st. However, there are exemptions to the ELP proof requirements. So a couple of examples would be if you've completed 3 or more years of post-secondary education in Canada or in a Canadian institution, or if you completed a graduate degree in a Canadian institution, you are exempt from providing the proof. There is also a couple other criteria that would exempt you from providing an ELP proof, and we've included the website for your reference. And I also wanted to quickly note that applicants with an average of 80% or higher will automatically be considered for the Kaivan Future Cities Graduate Scholarship. This is valued at $5,000 and is paid over 3 terms. So preferences will be given to students who demonstrate leadership and community engagement. So that's it from me. So if you do have any further questions regarding ELP requirements or any other admission criteria, please feel free to reach out to me or Christina. We are happy to answer your questions. And I'll pass it over to Christina for the next slide.
All right, thank you very much. I'm just going to wrap up the presentation with a little bit of information about tuition, as well as the application process. So for the Master of Future Cities program, tuition is assessed on a per course basis. So you can see that we have our per course fees on the slide here, $2,000 approximately for domestic students and $4,600 for international students. You'll also be assessed a small incidental fee, and this incidental fee is small because we assume that the majority of you will not be in the Waterloo region and therefore will not be accessing any of the services on campus. But there are some services that you can access at a distance, which that incidental fee will cover. In order to complete your online application, you would go through our web portal on the Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affair website. You'd enter your information, and that is where you would pay your $125 Canadian application fee. After about 1 to 2 business days, you'll then receive an email from the University of Waterloo, and that email will contain your student ID number, and then it will also automatically email your referees at that time as well. So make sure that when you're reaching out to your references, the timeline with which you want to complete your application aligns with a time that your references can complete this part of your application. After you receive your University of Waterloo student ID number, you can then log on to our system and start uploading your documents. So you can feel free to start collecting your documents at any time so that they're ready when you start the application process. And then from there, once your application is complete, the MFC team can then start assessing your application. I will say that the University of Waterloo is moving to a new application system, and it's supposed to be streamlined and a much better experience for applicants such as yourselves. So you may find that the exact logistics with which you apply might be slightly different than the ones that I'm presenting today. So when I distribute the recording of the webinar, I'm also going to be including an important how to apply webpage. And when you apply, I suggest you read through that webpage right before you apply, because if we've switched to the new application system, all of the new steps will be included in that website. So they'll be very similar, but there might be some nuanced differences when we switch over to that new and improved application system. And if you have any questions during the process, Cynthia is happy to assist you with the enb-mfc@uwaterloo email address. And with that, that concludes the presentation portion of our webinar, which is nice because we have lots of time to take some amazing questions that have been sent through the Q&A box during the presentation. I am going to all right. Like I said before at the beginning of the presentation, I'm going to be prioritizing questions that I feel will benefit the greatest audience, and I may be combining your question with other people's questions in order to get a comprehensive answer for the greatest audience members. So the first question I'd like the panel to address is one that revolves around research. There are a couple of people who are really looking for the opportunity to undertake research in the Master of Future Cities program, how that would look in a course-based program, and what the possibility is of advancing to a doctoral degree after that. So Leah, you're nodding, so maybe I'll send it over to you first.
Thanks, Christina, and thanks. That's a really, really great question. So maybe I think there's a few ways I would answer this. The first is in terms of research, there is a ton of research going on across our faculty related to future cities. The Future Cities Institute is engaged in quite a bit of research as well. So if you are in the Masters of Future Cities program and want more exposure to or potential collaboration about research, I would just say reach out to me at the Future Cities Institute, and I'd be happy to connect any of our MFC students to ongoing research, or try to connect you to researchers from across our faculties who may be doing research that's of interest to you. So it wouldn't be, I guess to say, it would not be part of the actual program, but there's lots of opportunity for collaborations and learning more about ongoing research. Regarding moving on to a PhD, I think it really depends on the PhD. So there are more and more kind of practice PhDs that are popping up around the country. It really depends on the kind of PhD program that you would want to do. So if you are wanting to, and this might just be a question, I guess, back to the students, and that might be a question that you also would want to ask another faculty member who you would potentially be considering doing a PhD with in the future. I would say typically PhD programs, because they require an in-depth amount of and quite a bit of research, typically you would want to probably do a thesis or like a research-based master's program to get into a PhD, but that is not always the case. So I would say it would be a good idea to reach out to the department that you're potentially thinking about and ask what they think about that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We had a question coming in from someone who works in asset management, managing city-owned assets. And their background is in engineering, and they're just curious how this might advance their career and expand their knowledge in the field of smart cities. So I'd love to address that question, but also just also address like how people could implement what they learned in the course in any workplace. Helen, did you want to answer this one?
Sure, I can, but I was going to say also, Kelsey, maybe you should pipe in as well. This is because you're an engineer, and you might want to talk about that. So what I am seeing more and more in the field is that thinking about the future and understanding the trajectory of how things are going to change in cities, how new technology is being incorporated is really changing the way that people are doing their jobs. And having a competency around that sort of resilience building preparation is a really important skill for you. So if you're intending to stay in your job and use this as a way to amplify your competency, I think it's a great thing. But some people are trying to leave their job and find a new place that they're going to fit. And so this is really, I think Leah and I were reading it the other day about, futures being the next big skill that people are really looking for in people as they're trying to imagine how they're going to be able to do their job. And so I would say kind of across the board, there's an opportunity to incorporate the skills that you learn. But I'll pass it over to Kelsey.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think from the engineering perspective, the interdisciplinary nature of this program and those types of future skills would really complement an engineering background and help, make it more well-rounded, which I think fits really well in working for a city and in the types of opportunities and current work you might be doing.
And Kelsey, since I have you here, there have been a couple of questions that have come through that are that are asking you how you balance a full-time job as well as this program and how much time you budget each week in order to complete the course requirements.
Sure. Yeah, I think the fact that I can do one course at a time as a part-time student is very helpful. So it's easy to know what to expect at the beginning of the semester with the course outline and plan for that. I think if you're in Ontario or in the East, the coursework, at least for the course with Helen right now, would be in the evening. So it's kind of late afternoon for me, which still works for my schedule. But I think just allotting, an evening, now that we're doing group work, it's some coordination, but a couple meetings when we're working towards a deadline. And then otherwise I know what to expect because the course is once a week. And then we get pre-course readings and those types of things. So I think the number of hours per week maybe varies. So I don't know if I can easily give a number of hours, but it's definitely been manageable so far. And I think just keeping it to one course per semester is how it will work well for me.
Excellent, thank you. We have one question that's looking for some clarity around the Future Cities degree and how it differentiates you from a planner. Leah, did you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, I can take that. So I'm in the School of Planning. Marta's also here in the School of Planning. So the Masters in Planning programs that we have here are accredited degree programs. which means that at the end of the degree, both our undergrad and our master's program in planning are accredited degrees, so that it's the pathway to becoming a registered professional planner is very clear and direct. The Masters of Future Cities is not a planning degree. So it is not a accredited degree for planning. So that is not the goal, producing planners. So those are, yeah, I would see them as quite separate. And that also, I think, is reflected by the fact that the Masters of Future Cities is within the whole faculty, and all of those different departments that are contributing to the courses, rather than within the School of Planning.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've had a couple of questions about who this program is best for. There are people who whether or not it's better for early career professionals, mid-career professionals, more senior level leadership, and how it could potentially benefit people from all different levels and experience.
I can answer that as a mid-career professional, that it has been a great fit so far, and the cohort that I'm in has a bit of a wide range of who's in it. So I think it would be flexible enough and relatable to any position based on the types of thinking that we're learning about, and the fact that it's learning about working together. I think having a broad range of folks is a helpful aspect of it.
And Helen, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so I would say from an instructor's perspective, having a wide range of types of students, some with lots of experience, some with who are earlier on in their career, is actually beneficial, because you're bringing entirely different viewpoints to the table. So at least at the beginning of the program, and maybe some of the later courses, they are looking for people with more experience to bring to the table. But I think that the selection of courses is pretty wide and speaks to that idea of boosting skills that you already have, but not relying on you being sort of exceedingly expert in one area before you can take any of the courses. They're, I think, intended to be sort of exposure to new material, no matter what level you're at.
Excellent. We've had a question about how this program differs from like a purely strategic foresight and innovation program. They mentioned OCAD in the question, but like really talking more about the context of cities. And Helen, you've raised your hand, so go ahead.
So I taught in that program, so I can tell you the difference between the two. So this program is really focused 100% on cities. And the skills and methods that you learn as a foresighter are similar skills that you can apply to all kinds of different domains. But the coursework, the examples, the projects, they're all focused on cities. And the connection to the Future Cities Institute, I think, is a really valuable one for you. So it's a highly particular aligned interest in cities, because they're so important, and because like the way that we live in cities is changing so dramatically. So I would say, although there are transferable skills for sure, the focus of the work is very much on cities here. And so I say that having taught in both.
Amazing. We've been getting a couple of questions about a variety of interests that people have that are curious whether or not these topics will be addressed in the Master of Future Cities program. So anything from flora and fauna interactions, natural disasters, climate change, AI. And so maybe someone could speak to the opportunity to customize the degree based on your interests and the opportunities to potentially explore different electives.
I can maybe speak to the electives, and then I would love to have Marta's feedback on the capstone and how that's kind of customizable. But yeah, so like I mentioned in the presentation part, we're currently exploring options across the entire university for electives that might fit. And so I think, the One Health approach, which is looking at the health of people and the health of planet together. And by planet, I mean like natural and also like flora and fauna, like we're talking about. That is becoming more of a prominent theme. And there are several courses across our faculty that where you could look at food and other kinds of examples. So I think in terms of electives, it's again pretty broad. I think it would be more broad as well for students who would be able to come to campus and take something in person, just because not every single course is available online. But yeah, I'd be curious to know more about the capstone and how Marta sees the customizability of the capstone.
Yeah, I think the capstone will follow a similar. It will be similar in a structure to what we do when we launch the program, because you have gotten those skills. And what I'm envisioning is to apply those skills to a real world issue. So I think that is likely to change from year to year. So some years might be about, I think that I saw going through the list of questions, could be about nature-based solutions in the city. So that's something that I do a lot. It might be about climate impacts. It could be about homelessness. So I think that each year will, it will rotate so that there is that ability of taking a deeper dive and exploring a specific topic in the capstone.
Excellent.
Can I add a quick comment to that one? Sorry,
Please.
Christina. Just based on the coursework we've done so far, I think there's tons of chances to work in your interests, because we're looking at issues that are so big. And it's been really interesting working in groups to see how what we're creating becomes so much better, because each of us are bringing our interests and areas of expertise. So I think kind of at a more granular level, there's lots of chances to bring different ideas to the table also.
Excellent. We have a question about how the Master of Future Cities can help work at NGOs in the future. Like, for example, they have UN Habitat. So maybe if someone wanted to speak to the possibility of working at NGOs after graduation, or if anyone would like to speak to the flexibility of this program working in multiple sectors after you're done. I want to start.
The UN is a huge consumer of futures work. So if you want to work with the UN, they're already on board. So that's a good pick.
Amazing. It looks like we have Marta. Did you want to add something to that? I saw you unmute.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a lot of my work favors working with folks that are in the non-for-profit sector, and I think that there's, in fact, a lot more creativity in the margins than there is on the mainstream. So I think that it is a great space to think about using design thinking, future anticipation, that type of methods in the NGO realm. So I think that, and as Helen mentioned, like the big NGOs are already thinking about it. But I think the small NGOs might not talk about it in this particular way, but they are already doing it.
Amazing. We have one more question in the queue, and I actually think it's a great question. So this program is largely delivered online and asynchronously. And so what are the opportunities for networking and getting to know your cohort members, outside of the residency at the beginning, and getting to know their research areas and goals more deeply? So Leah, did you want to take it? And then maybe Kelsey, you could speak about how you have been connecting with your cohort after Leah.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. So I think this is a really fantastic question. And it is also the reason why the group course, the block course at the very beginning, is is absolutely essential and required. So Kelsey already talked about kind of that very intense time together and how that sets the stage for the next 1 or 2 or 3 years with interacting with your cohort. So related to your faculty members, I would say the same as I would say to any student, which would be if you have a faculty member, a professor who's teaching something that you're very interested in, talk to them about what they're doing and get to know them and reach out and ask questions about, you know, where your areas of interest align with theirs. I think there are also going to be, so the Futures in Cities Institute is pretty new and we're still kind of building up the programming and that kind of thing. But one of the things we've been looking at is a bit of a broader kind of student society, or what that might look like with other ways to engage students, and not just MFC students, but more broadly across the university, for students who are doing research or in programs that are aligned with the Future Cities Institute kind of buckets of interest. So, which again are very, very broad. So yeah, so that's how I would answer, but curious to hear what Kelsey has to say.
Sure. Yeah, I would definitely echo the thoughts on the residency and how critical that was in kind of forging the bonds and learning about the cohort and you know, the instructors. So I think that really set the stage for the group work that we're doing now, where we're working closely together, and it's online, so it's different than in person. But since we've had the in-person time, you know, we're able to work pretty closely, and I think there's more group work to come. So I imagine these connections will maintain them over the course of the program.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, we have no more questions in the queue, and we're only a couple of minutes away from 1:30. So with that, it seems like we are okay to wrap up our webinar. I'd like to say a quick thank you to all of our panelists, our presenters today, for sharing their knowledge and insight into the Master of Future Cities program. And I hope that this information has been valuable to you, and it's given you the information that you need in order to start the application process. Get in touch with me or Cynthia or any one of us in order to start your application and start thinking about joining us in the Master of Future Cities in fall 2025. And with that, just a reminder that a recording of this webinar, as well as a collection of the links that we talked about today, will be distributed to you no more than 24 hours after the conclusion of this webinar. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.